Have you ever wondered about the origins of a mystic who challenged conventional spirituality? What kind of childhood shapes a man who will become one of the most controversial spiritual leaders of our time? Who was Osho before he became Osho, the enlightened master? In the early 20th century, the small town of Tamarni witnessed the convergence of two remarkable destinies. Babulal Jain, known affectionately as Dadaji, was born in 1908 into a devout family of Digambar Jains from the Taran Panthi sect. They were followers of the revered Jain saint Taran Swami. Meanwhile, in the village of Kuchwada, 40 miles from Bhopal, a young girl named Saraswati Devi was born in 1915. In keeping with the customs of the time, Saraswati was married to Babulal at the tender age of 7. On December 11, 1931, in the quaint village of Kuchwada, Saraswati Devi gave birth to a boy whose beauty and serene presence led her father to instantly name him Raja, meaning the king in Sanskrit. This child would later be known to the world as Osho. Following Osho's birth, Raja Saheb, Osho's maternal grandfather, sent his servant Bura on a bullock cart to Tamarni to invite Babulal's family to celebrate the newborn's arrival. Despite the challenging journey, Babulal and his parents eagerly returned to Kuchwada. The family was welcomed with open arms and showered with gifts. It was during this celebration that Raja Saheb made an unusual request. He asked Babulal to leave the baby in Kuchwada to keep them company in their old age. Babulal, moved by his father-in-law's plea, agreed and returned to Tamarni, leaving Saraswati and the newborn Osho behind. Decades later, Bhagavati, a longtime disciple of Osho, visited Kuchwada. She found that the village had remained largely unchanged, a testament to its timelessness. The two-story house where Osho spent his early years stood surrounded by a sturdy fence and gate, just as it did in his childhood. Osho's early years in Kuchwada were marked by unparalleled freedom and affection, thanks to his loving maternal grandparents. For 8 years, they nurtured him in an environment that fostered his burgeoning curiosity and independence, until his grandfather's passing necessitated his move to his parents' home. Osho was given the name Rajneesh Chandra Mohan, a unique name suggested by his uncle Shekhar. While his pet name remained Raja within the family, his schoolmates began calling him Rajneesh, which means Lord of the Full Moon. Lama Karmapa from Rumtek Monastery in Sikkim has shared an extraordinary account regarding Osho's previous life. According to him, Osho's former body, known as Pengen Pawa Lutup, is preserved as the 97th among 99 bodies in a secluded cave in Tibet. This previous life, which took place 700 years ago, saw Osho leading a mystery school in the Tibetan mountains. In that life, he was a revered Tibetan incarnation. 7 centuries ago, Pengen Pawa Lutup was engaged in a profound spiritual practice that involved a total fast lasting 21 days, meant to be completed before death. However, due to unforeseen circumstances, he was unable to finish the fast, leaving 3 days incomplete. These 3 days were destined to be completed in his current incarnation as Osho. A fascinating event during Osho's infancy seemed to echo this unfinished spiritual journey. Upon his birth, the newborn Osho refused to suckle his mother's milk for the first 3 days, persistently spitting out any milk that was forced upon him. This peculiar behavior worried his family, but an elderly Brahmin lady in the village interpreted it as a sign of his saintly nature. She advised them not to be alarmed, explaining that a great saint had taken birth in the form of this child. To prevent his throat from drying out, she suggested they give him warm water instead of milk. On the fourth morning, the tension in the household lifted when Osho finally began to nurse from his mother. This account was later narrated by Osho's mother to Vasant Joshi, who was compiling a biography on Osho. Thus, from his very birth, Osho's life was marked by mystery and spiritual significance. These early experiences set the stage for a journey that would challenge the boundaries of human consciousness and leave an indelible mark on the world. Nestled amidst the tranquility of Madhya Pradesh, young Raja's early years were adorned with moments of wonder and exploration. According to his doting grandparents, one of his favorite pastimes was gazing at the moon and stars for hours, his face adorned with a serene smile. As he grew, Raja embarked on adventurous expeditions into the surrounding forests astride a horse, accompanied by Bura and his trusty, primitive gun. Amidst the whispering trees and rustling leaves, Raja's inquisitive nature began to blossom. He started posing profound yet simple questions. Where does the river begin its journey? Where does it end? What lies beyond the horizon? What sustains the colors and fragrances of the flowers? The village pond became Raja's sanctuary, a place where he spent countless hours in silent contemplation. He would watch the lotus flowers sway gently on the water's surface. The fragrance of the Rangoon creeper tree and the bushes nearby enveloped him, creating a sensory tapestry that fueled his young imagination. As Raja grew, he ventured farther to explore the Narmada River. The river became his teacher, offering lessons in resilience, adaptability, and the ever-changing rhythms of life. Thus, amidst the simplicity and beauty of Kuchwada, young Rajneesh was nurtured. Young Rajneesh found himself cast under the ominous shadow of a prophecy, one that would shape the course of his extraordinary life. A revered state astrologer in Varanasi had foreseen a destiny fraught with the specter of death. According to this prophecy, Rajneesh was destined to confront death every 7th year, with an inevitable end foreseen at the age of 21. A fate seemingly etched in the stars. As he grew older, this ominous prediction loomed ever closer. By the age of 14, in the year 1945, young Rajneesh decided to confront this prophecy head-on. In a desolate Shiva temple near Gadarwara, accompanied by his middle school teacher, he embarked on a daring experiment. For 7 days, he immersed himself in solitude, meditating deeply within the temple's inner sanctum. Days passed like shadows, marked by silent contemplation and occasional tunes from his flute under the ancient peepal tree. Some nights, he climbed atop the tree, feeling the presence of mystical beings and gazing at the starlit sky. During one profound moment, as he struck the temple bell, a serpentine visitor emerged, a 7-foot snake gliding gracefully over his legs. Locked in a gaze, Rajneesh felt an overwhelming surge of ecstasy, a transformative experience that would later be recognized as his first satori. This encounter with death, embodied by the snake, tested his acceptance and understanding of mortality. It marked a turning point, diminishing his youthful mischief and drawing him more frequently to the eerie solitude of the cremation grounds, where fear of ghosts and witches kept others away at night. Thus, the tale of Rajneesh's early years reveals a narrative woven with courage, curiosity, and an unyielding quest for truth amidst the shadows of destiny. In those days, Shashi was a constant presence in Rajneesh's life. 2 years younger, she was the daughter of Dr. Sharma, who lived near the ruined Shiva temple. It was the very temple where Rajneesh had his profound death experience at age 14.
I had a girlfriend when I was young. The name of the girlfriend was Sasi. She died in 47. She was the daughter of a certain doctor, Dr. Sharma, of my village. He is also dead now.
From her house, she often watched his steps as he visited the temple, her eyes filled with admiration and love. Sometimes, Rajneesh had to remind Shashi that he wanted to be alone in the temple for his meditation. Yet, her love for him was undeniable, and it was returned with equal affection. She would even follow his swimming in the river using her father's binoculars. Shashi, a Brahmin, and Rajneesh, from the Baniya community of Jains, faced societal barriers that made their love all the more poignant.
I used to call Sasi Gudiya.
Affectionately called Gudiya by Rajneesh, their bond was a tender and rebellious defiance of the rigid caste system. Their love story was marked by stolen moments and whispered promises. Tragically, this beautiful bond was cut short when Shashi succumbed to typhoid at just 14, leaving Rajneesh, then 16, heartbroken. While Rajneesh was away attending the funeral of the mystic Pagal Baba, Shashi's health deteriorated. Scorned by some women in the neighborhood for her relationship with Rajneesh, she withdrew from the world, often sitting alone by the Sakar River or in the deserted Shiva temple. Her exposure to the cold led to a fever, which tragically turned into typhoid and pneumonia. When Rajneesh returned to Gadarwara and learned of Shashi's condition, he rushed to her side. He assured her of his unwavering love and dismissed the caste-based prejudices. For 3 days, he visited her, bringing roses and sharing gentle words, trying to lift her spirits. One early morning, Shashi took her final breath, with Rajneesh at her side. He did not return home until after her funeral, carrying with him a profound sense of loss. Though their time together was brief, Shashi's love and untimely death profoundly impacted Rajneesh. Her memory became a cornerstone in his journey, reflecting on his teachings of love. During a census in Kuchwada, an officer arrived at the house of Osho's grandparents, making various inquiries, including about their religious beliefs. Nana, Osho's grandfather, stated Jainism as his belief. However, Nani, his grandmother, declared that she did not believe in any religion. Nani was born into a family of tantrics in Khajuraho, practicing meditation without adherence to any particular religion. Remarkably, she remained unmarried until the age of 24, a rarity for a woman of her beauty. It is said that even the king of Chhatarpur, where Khajuraho was located, fell in love with her, but she turned him down. Her father, a poet, insisted on her right to refuse, allowing her to fall in love with Nana. The ancient tradition of Tantra, older than the Rig Veda, rooted in the magic cults of ancient India, was an integral part of Nani's heritage. Tantra, a practice of action and experiencing, was not a religion or ideology but a way of embracing all pleasures of life. For Osho, these tantric elements were woven into his teachings and the energy of his later ashram in Pune. Nana often mentioned that his tantric wife was a riddle to him, especially in her unconventional way of raising Rajneesh. Believing in learning through experience, Nani provided young Rajneesh with wine, cigarettes, and even the opportunity to meet a prostitute, an offer Osho politely declined after watching her dance in the village. Years later, as Rajneesh prepared to leave Gadarwara for his studies in Jabalpur, Nani struggled with the separation. She made him promise to visit her every month, drink his daily milk, and continue purchasing books. She encouraged him to visit Khajuraho to explore the temples and their carvings. Opening a cherished box, Nani handed Rajneesh 4 books she had received from her dying father, likely handwritten manuscripts wrapped in a cloth. Gyan Bed, a sannyasi of Osho, describes this moment vividly. I have these invaluable books on Tantra as memories of my father. I could not read them because I am illiterate. I preserved them only for you to read. Now you are an adult. It is time for you to learn the secrets hidden in them. Rajneesh, curiously, unwrapped the books, finding the Tantra Sutras of Lord Shiva written on papers, made out of birch. After his enlightenment in 1953, Rajneesh visited Nani in Gadarwara. She recognized that he was no longer the same. Later, he called her his first disciple. Sadly, she passed away in 1970. The same year he began initiating disciples into sannyas in Manali, though she was never initiated into sannyas. Her influence on Osho's life and teachings was profound and everlasting. In the East, enlightenment is described as a state of ultimate consciousness or total awareness, as attained by Gautama Buddha, Lao Tzu, Krishna, Kabir, and others. Contrary to his earlier Satori experiences, Osho's enlightenment event had a permanent impact on his consciousness. As a fully awakened man, all sense of personality, in terms of identity and biography, had evaporated. Enlightenment, nirvana, kaivalya, or moksha, is a state of no mind, beyond all attributes, certainly not a concept, to be explained in logical terms, as it transcends any logic and verbal attempt to express the phenomenon. How does one express in words that which is beyond words? The Malshri tree, a focus point for Osho's enlightenment, still stands in Bunvertal Garden in Jabalpur, surrounded by a small ditch, accessible via a steel bridge. From early childhood, Rajneesh had been experimenting with out-of-body experiences, setting the stage for what was to follow in 1953. One day, while walking in the hills around Sagar, memories flooded back. In his youth in Gadarwara, he had once jumped into the swollen Sakar River during the monsoon. To his surprise, an out-of-body experience ensued. where he watched himself swim while his body remained submerged. Motionless, he was carried safely to the far bank by the river current, his soul reuniting with his body upon reaching the land. This episode from Gadarwara became a vivid recollection when, approximately 1 year before the big event, Rajneesh found himself sitting in one of his favorite trees outside Sagar University. He had been invited from Jabalpur to participate in a 3-day debating contest. As was his custom, he would sit in the tree for 2 or 3 hours at a time. One day in 1952, he fell from the tree. In that moment, he felt his soul floating in the air, connected to his body by a silvery string attached to his abdomen. Unlike his previous experience in the Sagar River, this time his soul could not re-enter his body right away.
तो एक बड़े वृक्ष पर ऊपर बैठकर मैं ध्यान करता था रोज रात। एक दिन ध्यान में कब कितना लीन हो गया मुझे पता नहीं, और कब शरीर वृक्ष से गिर गया वो मुझे पता नहीं। जब नीचे गिर पड़ा शरीर, तब मैंने चौंक कर देखा कि ये क्या हो गया। मैं तो वृक्ष पर ही था और शरीर नीचे गिर गया। सिर्फ एक रजत रज्जू, एक सिल्वर कार्ड नाभि से और मुझ तक जुड़ी हुई थी, एक अत्यंत चमकदार शुभ्र रेखा।
His life teetered on the brink of a constant nervous breakdown, or perhaps a breakthrough, as he found himself increasingly disconnected from the people around him who thought him mad. Intensively doubting and questioning everything, he slowly moved towards becoming a total witness to existence. He ate very little and exhausted himself both mentally and physically by running every morning and evening for 5 to 8 miles. His spiritual state was such that, in the West, it might have been diagnosed as a severe mental illness.
तो भीतर एक वैक्यूम आया, वो कोई 1 वर्ष में बिल्कुल वैक्यूम नहीं था। वैक्यूम में मतलब आप आके बैठ गए और मुझे पता नहीं कि आप आ गए। आपको देख रहा हूं कि आप आ गए, आप बैठे, आप चले गए, लेकिन कल आप मुझे पूछें कि मैं आया था तो मुझे पता नहीं। यानी आंखें बिल्कुल ऐसी होगी जैसे दर्पण हो, कोई आया और कोई गया। और 1 वर्ष तक शायद मैं ज्यादातर पड़ा ही रहा।
For 7 days in mid-March 1953, Rajneesh lived in a very hopeless and helpless state. Those days of transformation were the final phase before enlightenment happened. What he experienced on the night of March 21st, 1953, occurred while he was in Bunvertal Garden. The entire day, he had been in an intoxicating state, having only consumed some fruits and milk offered to him by Kranti, who, with her brother Arvind, had been looking after his needs during this challenging period. His severe headaches were not caused by intensive reading, as in Gadarwara, but were now closely related to his psychological state. He had been meditating alone in his small, dimly lit room. Suddenly, an overwhelming sense of suffocation enveloped him. An urge to escape the confinement of 4 walls and connect with the boundless expanse of nature. Driven by an indescribable urge, he left his room and stepped into the cool, silent embrace of the night. The moment Osho stepped outside, the feeling of suffocation vanished. He felt a profound relief, as if the vastness of the sky and the night air were soothing his soul. Drawn by an invisible force, he began walking towards a nearby garden, his steps light and effortless, almost as if he was floating. It was a walk unlike any other, where he felt a detachment from the earthly pull of gravity. Osho described it as walking, running, or perhaps even flying, so weightless he felt. It was as if some otherworldly energy had taken hold of him, guiding his every move. For the first time in his life, Osho felt he was not alone. He was no longer an individual, but a part of something immensely larger. The metaphorical drop had returned to the ocean, merging with the infinite. A tremendous power surged within him, not his own, but an all-encompassing energy. In that moment, he ceased to exist as Chandra Mohan. He was the universe, boundless and powerful. Entering the garden where he walked daily, everything appeared different. The garden was asleep, yet more alive than he had ever seen it. The trees, the grass, the very earth seemed to glow with an inner light. A tree, the Malshri tree, stood out, radiating a brilliant luminescence that pulled him towards it. He sat beneath its branches, feeling an unparalleled peace as the universe itself seemed to settle around him. Time lost its meaning as he sat there. Hours passed in the blink of an eye, yet those hours felt like an eternity. The experience was timeless, a virgin reality untouched by the constructs of human time. It was a moment of pure existence, uncorrupted and immeasurable. Osho described the experience as a paradox. That night, he became empty and yet full, non-existent and yet existence itself. He died and was reborn, but the one who was reborn was not the same as the one who had died. It was a discontinuity. An entirely new being emerged from the depths of his soul. Reflecting on his enlightenment, Osho laughed. It was a laugh of profound realization, the absurdity of seeking enlightenment when it was already our intrinsic nature. Enlightenment is not something to be achieved, but something that we inherently possess. To strive for what we already are is the greatest absurdity. And in that laugh, Osho found the ultimate truth. We are born enlightened, and realizing it is simply recognizing what has always been.